Chapter 12, page 110. Nur watched him as he tried on the uniform, staring at him in surprised delight until he'd done up the last button. Then, after a moment or two, she said, "Do be sensible. I couldn't bear to lose you again." This was a good idea, Saeed said, displaying his work and examining his reflection in the mirror. "I suppose I'd better be satisfied with the rank of captain." By the next evening, however, she'd heard all about his recent dramatic adventure and seen pictures of him in a copy of a weekly magazine belonging to one of her transient male companions. She broke down in front of him. "You've killed someone," she said, letting out the words with a wail of despair. "How terrible! Didn't I plead with you?" "But it happened before we met," he said, caressing her. She looked away. "You don't love me," she said wanly. "I know that, but at least we could have lived together until you did love me. But we still can't do that." "What's the use?" she said, almost crying, "when you've committed murder?" "We can run away together," Saeed said with a reassuring grin. "It's easy." "What are we waiting for then? For the storm to blow over?" Nurse stamped her foot in frustration. "But I've heard that there are troops blocking all the exits in Cairo, as you were the first murderer ever." The newspapers, Saeed thought, all part of the secret war. But he hid his feelings and showed her only his outward calm. "I'll get away all right," he said, "as soon as I decide to. You'll see." Pretending a sudden rage, he gripped her by the hair and snarled, "Don't you know yet who Saeed Maran is? All the papers are talking about him. You still don't believe in him? Listen to me. We'll live together forever, and you'll see what the fortune teller told you come true." Next evening, escaping from his loneliness and hoping for news, he slipped out again to Tarzan's coffee house. But as soon as he appeared in the doorway, Tarzan hurried over and took him out into the open, some distance off. "Please don't be angry with me," he said apologetically. "Even my cafe is no longer safe for you." "But I thought the storm had died down now," Saeed said, the darkness hiding his concern. "No, it's getting worse all the time, because of the newspapers. Go into hiding, but forget about trying to get out of Cairo for a while. Don't the papers have anything to go on about but Saeed Maran? They made such a lot of noise to everyone about your past raids that they've got all the government forces in the area stirred up against you." Saeed got up to leave. "We can meet again outside the cafe anytime you wish," Tarzan remarked as they said goodbye. So Saeed went back to his hideout in Nur's house. The solitude, the dark, the waiting, where he suddenly found himself roaring, "It's you, Raouf! You're behind all this!" By this time, all the papers had dropped his case, all except Zahra. It was still busy raking up the past, goading the police by trying so hard to kill him. In fact, it was making a national hero of him. Raouf Ilwan would never rest until the noose was around his neck, and Raouf had all the forces of repression, the law. And you, does your ruined life have any meaning at all unless it is to kill your enemies? Ilish Sidra, whereabouts unknown, and Raouf Ilwan in his mansion of steel? What meaning will there have been to your life if you fail to teach your enemies a lesson? No power on earth will prevent the punishing of the dogs. That's right, no power on earth. "Raouf Ilwan," Saeed pleaded aloud, "tell me how it is that the time can bring such terrible changes to people. Not just a revolutionary student, but revolution personified as a student. Your stirring voice pitching itself downward toward my ears as I sat at my father's feet in the courtyard of the building, with the force to awaken the very soul. And you talk about princes and pashas transforming those fine gentlemen with your magic into mere thieves. And to see you on Mudiria Road striding out amidst your men you called your equals as they munched their sugarcane in their flowing galabeas, when your voice would reach such a pitch that it seemed to flow right over the field and make the palm tree bow before it, unforgettable. Yes, there was a strange power in you that I found nowhere else, not even in Sheikh Ali al-Junaidi. That's how you were, Raouf. To you alone goes the credit for my father's enrolling me in school. You'd roar with delighted laughter at my success. 'Do you see now?' you'd say to my father. 'You didn't even want him to get an education. Just you look at those eyes of his. He's going to shake things to their foundations.' You taught me to love reading. You discussed everything with me as if I were your equal. I was one of your listeners at the foot of the same tree where the history of my love began. And the times themselves were listening to you, too. The people, theft, the holy fire, the rich, hunger, justice. The day you were imprisoned, you rose up in my eyes to the very sky, higher still when you protected me the first time I stole, when your remarks about theft gave me back my self-respect. Then there was the time you told me sadly, there's no real point in isolated theft, there has to be an organization. After that, I never stopped either reading or robbing. It was you who gave me the names of people who deserved to be robbed, and it was in theft that I found my glory, my honor. and I was generous to many people, Ilish Sidra among them. Saeed shouted in anger at the darkened room. Are you really the same one, the Rauf Ilwan who owns the mansion? You're the fox behind the newspaper campaign. You too want to kill me, to murder your conscience and the past as well. But I won't die before I've killed you. You're the number one traitor. What nonsense life would turn out to be if I were myself killed tomorrow in retribution for murdering a man I didn't even know. If there's going to be any meaning to life and to death, too, I simply have to kill you. My last outbursts of rage at the evil of the world, and all those things lying out there in the graveyard below the window will help me. As for the rest, I'll leave it to Sheik Ali to solve the riddle. Just when the call to the dawn prayers was announced, he heard the door open and Nur came in carrying some grilled meat, drinks, and newspapers. She seemed quite happy, having apparently forgotten her 2 days of distress and depression, and her presence dispelled his own gloom and exhaustion, made him ready again to embrace what life had to offer: food, drink, and news. She kissed him, and for the first time he responded spontaneously with a sense of gratitude, knowing her now to be the person closest to him for as long as he might live. He wished she'd never leave. He uncorked a bottle as usual, poured himself a glass, and drank it down in one gulp. Why didn't you get some sleep? Nur said, peering closely at his tired face. Flipping through the newspapers, he made no reply. It must be torture to wait in the dark, she said, feeling sorry for him. How are things outside? He asked, tossing the papers aside. Just like always. She undressed down to her slip, and Saeed smelled powder moistened with sweat. People are talking about you, she went on, as if you were some storybook hero, but they don't have any idea what torture we go through. Most Egyptians neither fear nor dislike thieves, said Saeed as he bit into a piece of meat. Several minutes passed in silence while they ate. Then he added, but they do have an instinctive dislike for dogs. Well, said Nur with a smile, licking her fingertips, I like dogs. I don't mean that kind of dog. Yes, I always had one at home until I saw the last one die. That made me cry a lot, so I decided not to have one again. That's right, said Saeed. If love's going to cause problems, just steer clear of it. You don't understand me, or love me. Don't be like that, he said, pleading. Can't you see the whole world is cruel enough and unjust enough as it is? Nur drank until she could hardly sit up. Her real name was Shalabia, she confessed. Then she told him tales of the old days in Baliana, of her childhood amid the quiet waters, of her youth and how she'd run away. And my father was the Umda, she said proudly, the village headman. You mean the Umda's servant? She frowned, but he went on. Well, that's what you told me first. Nur laughed so heartily that Saeed could see the bits of parsley caught in her teeth. Did I really say that? She asked. Yes, and that's what turned Rauf Ilwan into a traitor. She stared at him uncomprehendingly. And who's Rauf Ilwan? Don't lie to me, Saeed snarled. A man who has to stay in the dark, waiting by himself. A man like that can't stand lies.